And I am delivering these comments. My colleague Maria Victoire from the Republic of Mauritius should be here, but she hasn't been able to make it. I would like to start with a sentence that Ms. Puri brought at the beginning of this dialogue, is that this review, monitoring, accountability process is a critical element for the credibility of the agenda. And that is why we are, civil society, so engaged in this dialogue. And I would like to build the comments that I'm going to make on many of the comments that have already been made, and especially about why is important this accountability mechanism for people living in extreme poverty, for vulnerable groups, for those who are left behind. ATD Fourth World grounds its work in the will of communities afflicted by poverty. All of our positions come from research carried out alongside these communities. In places like Madagascar, we work with families that have no legal identity. In New Orleans, we work with families whose children are more likely to go to prison than to finish school. Yet, working with them to evaluate policies is more than an exercise in social inclusion and participation. It is a truly professional work. We have learned with these communities, and now we better understand the impact of various policies on them. Beyond that, we uncover many whys that are very pertinent for this new agenda. Why are anti-Islam policies in Manila resisted by Islam dwellers? Why are conditional cash transfers problematic for marginalized communities in Brazil? Why are health centers not decreasing maternal mortality in indigenous communities in Bolivia? This is knowledge that exists but is ignored, expressed by voices that are unheard and people that are left behind. And I would like to make the connection here with some comments that mention the importance of data. And I want to say that this knowledge, when it is worked seriously, it is qualitative data. And it is the data that will allow us to learn how do we do this agenda so that we leave no one behind. And I want to make the link also with what the representative from the United States brought to the table with the open source development community, and that it is a community that will bring, help us manage many of the challenges of sustainable development. But the challenge of how to achieve sustainable development for all will come from the people that don't have access and have been left behind. When evaluating policies and recommendations, ATD Fourth World asks, what may this mean for a person living in poverty? We need to understand how a follow-up mechanism for the post-2015 agenda can impact communities living in poverty, whether in high or low-income countries. We believe that for these groups, a review and follow-up mechanism can do two critical things. First, provide a political basis for accountability, and second, enhance the contribution of communities to the review process. With a review mechanism that commits their governments to leave no one behind, people living in poverty will have an avenue with global reach by which they can work to secure essential services and protections and challenge social exclusion and discrimination. Language from the Secretary General's synthesis reports grabs this idea. If we are to succeed, the new agenda must become part of the contract between people, including civil society and responsible business, and their governments, national and local. Yet, in order for the review process to serve this purpose, people living in poverty and the organizations that work with them have to be viewed as partners in development. And I make the connection, many of you have mentioned this partnership. This is for people living in poverty, the partnership we are talking about. The act of holding governments accountable should not be viewed as a shaming exercise, but rather as a constructive one. If a government is failing short on the SDGs, then the global community needs to come together to support, not oppose the government. A critical step for that change in paradigm is to welcome the input of civil society organizations and of communities themselves, to reporting that will take place at the various levels of this review mechanism, including the global. Furthermore, reports like national reports, the Global Sustainability Report, and additional stakeholder reports that were mentioned by Romania should include data produced by communities affected by development policies. So we propose the following concrete language for the September Summit outcome document. Member States will implement national mechanisms for participatory monitoring that can complement standard initiatives for national level review. And a national stakeholder report with contributions from national non-governmental organizations will form part of a main written inputs of individual country progress. Now, we understand the added value of a follow-up and review mechanism and some of its vital components. While we understand that, we are worried that by the conversations we've heard at the last week's intergovernmental negotiations. The inclination of member states to use language of principles instead of concrete mechanisms or actions weakens the review framework and threatens the transformational potential of this agenda. So in this regard, we propose a few pieces of language to re-strengthen the follow-up and review section, especially in its global component. Firstly, we encourage member states to borrow from Resolution 67/290 and use language oriented the global review towards a, and I am quoting, dynamic and action-oriented agenda, ensuring the appropriate consideration of new and emerging sustainable development challenges. Second, in an effort to give the framework definition, we agreed with Korea's proposal, and we hope some member states will clearly link its global thematic reviews to other opening review platforms. And finally, and we understand that this is our most ambitious proposal, we emphasize that this global component of the review mechanism must aim to implement actions and commitments. The global review's added value is that it can mobilize resources and people at the global scale for a universal, ambitious, and comprehensive agenda. And this is one thing that the other levels cannot accomplish. And it must be highlighted with language like, and I'm quoting from the SG's report, to help to identify challenges and bottlenecks, and to mobilize action to address them. We hope member states will consider delving more deeply into the definition of the mechanism so that it can truly serve as a support for vulnerable and impoverished people around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now